Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a really compelling situation, something sparked by U.S. tariffs that had this, well, unexpected impact on Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, it really involves this frantic movement of mining equipment, specifically out of Southeast Asia. And you shared that Bangkok Post article.
I did, yeah. U.S. tariffs sparked a rush to get Bitcoin mining gear out of Asia. It really lays out this almost like a case study in global trade meeting the crypto world.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating look at, global supply chains, trade policy, and how it hits a really cutting-edge industry.
So our mission today, I guess, is to unpack that sequence of events.
Right.
What happened, why it happened, and what it tells us.
Exactly. Starting with the trigger, right? The tariff announcement itself.
Right. So President Trump announced these reciprocal tariffs. We're talking Thailand facing 36%, Indonesia 32%, and Malaysia 24%.
And these specific countries weren't random. They've become pretty important hubs for assembling and distributing crypto mining machines.
Which are basically those super powerful computers needed to, verify Bitcoin transactions and earn new coins.
Precisely. And the article points out these tariffs felt unexpectedly punitive. They weren't just small tweaks.
Punitive enough to cause immediate concern, clearly. Because these tariffs would dramatically hike up the cost for U.S. buyers, right?
Oh, definitely. It threatened the profitability for miners. And then came the deadline.
The deadline, yeah. Midnight, April 9th. Like something out of a movie. Get the gear out by then, or face those massive duties.
It must have been intense. The article quotes Christopher Burschel from Celian Cargo. He called the time frame unforgettable.
You could just imagine. Unforgettable. And Celian Cargo really had to scramble.
They did. Chartering 5 aircraft, managing dozens of trucks, even barges. It sounds like a huge logistical operation under immense pressure.
And the amount of equipment. What was it, $330 million worth?
Yeah, $330 million in mining gear moved from Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia, all heading to the U.S. before that deadline.
Wow. And Burschel apparently said there was over $80 million in potential tariff exposure.
That's the figure mentioned. So you see the stakes. That kind of money definitely explains the frantic pace.
It absolutely does. Losing that much would be a massive blow. But then the story takes a twist.
A big twist. On April 9th itself, the very day the tariffs were supposed to hit,
President Trump announces a pause.
Yeah.
A 90-day pause on those higher tariffs.
Exactly. Which, makes all that frantic, expensive shipping seem, well,
Kind of pointless. At least in terms of avoiding those specific tariffs right then.
pointless in hindsight, maybe. But the costs incurred during that rush, those were very, very real. No getting that money back.
No way. The article mentions miners paid up to 4 times the usual cost for air freight. 4 times.
And get this, someone familiar with it anonymously suggested it might have been like 20 times the cost of just shipping it by sea normally.
20 times. That is just astronomical. That really highlights the financial pain, even from a temporary policy threat.
It really does. And stepping back, this whole episode just puts a spotlight on the broader challenge for U.S. companies, doesn't it?
You mean trying to manage these global supply chains when trade policy can just shift so suddenly?
Exactly. The cost and the sheer difficulty of constantly having to potentially rework where things come from, how they get here, it's a huge burden.
And the crypto mining industry seems particularly vulnerable here. The article makes a point that there aren't many U.S.-made machines that can do this kind of high-performance computing profitably.
That's a key vulnerability. They really rely on foreign suppliers, often pointing to China's Bitmain Technologies as a major one.
And even if Bitmain is Chinese, the article says the gear often gets routed through Southeast Asia for assembly or distribution.
That seems to be the case, yeah. Which puts those Southeast Asian locations right in the crosshairs of these specific tariffs.
And this wasn't even the first hiccup they'd faced with supply chains, apparently.
No, the article mentions U.S. buyers already saw delays with Bitmain deliveries after Trump's election due to sort of increased scrutiny back then.
So this tariff threat just added another layer of complexity and maybe urgency onto existing issues.
Precisely. It just compounded those worries about supply chain reliability. And you see the industry trying to react.
Like Tariffs from Syntec Digital. He said they saw a jump in people asking about mining capacity outside the U.S.
Yeah, a surge in inquiries. And they were apparently hoping maybe their specific hardware could get tariff exemptions.
Which makes total sense. If you're staring down a 24 or 36% tariff, you'd definitely look at exemptions or moving operations.
But there was uncertainty about those exemptions too, right? Trump apparently downplayed the idea of broad exemptions for electronics.
Yeah, suggesting things like phones and computers might still get hit, so any relief for miners might have been temporary, or very specific.
It creates this unstable environment. You had Leo Lu from Bitfufu saying they could probably stay profitable even with a 24% Malaysian duty.
Okay, so some resilience there.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But he also expressed hope for tariff relief, generally, to help boost the U.S. mining sector. It shows the desire for stability.
And the disruption wasn't just contained to Southeast Asia, was it?
No, not at all. There's an example of Vishnu McKenchery from Compass Mining. They had to rush 3,000 units across the Canadian border after the announcement.
Wow, okay. So ripples everywhere. And he mentioned difficulty figuring out where parts even came from. China, Thailand.
Exactly. That adds another layer of complexity. Trying to determine origin for tariff rules when components come from all over.
He apparently said it's just really hard to make business decisions when the rules are changing, like hourly.
That really hits home, doesn't it? Trying to plan investments or operations in that kind of fluid environment must be incredibly difficult.
And the article gives some really specific kind of ground-level details from Southeast Asia.
Yeah, like Bitmain having an assembly factory on Batam in Indonesia, which is a free trade zone, interestingly.
And ES Freight Services had to arrange a last-minute barge just to get gear from Batam to Singapore to catch flights.
That's what it says. And then there was that chartered plane from Batam to Kuala Lumpur.
Oh yeah, the one that got delayed because they didn't have forklifts at the Batam airport.
Right. It sounds almost comical if it weren't for the serious money involved. Just highlights the logistical chaos.
Totally. And then Lauren Lin at Luxor Technology moving about 3,000 units out of Thailand.
And Warwat Paktisa Tayafong at World Air Logistics, coordinating 57 truck trips in Bangkok alone.
57 trucks just to fill 3 chartered planes, running nonstop operations. You can just picture the scene.
It really paints a picture of people working flat out under incredible pressure, huge costs, all driven by these policy shifts.
And it all kind of contrasts sharply with that pledge President Trump made about wanting Bitcoin to be made in the USA, supporting American miners.
It really does. This whole situation with U.S. companies so heavily reliant on overseas gear and scrambling because of international tariffs, it seems to run counter to that stated goal.
It highlights the gap between that political vision and the actual reality of how this global industry works.
Definitely. Building a purely domestic supply chain for something this specialized isn't simple. It's not something tariffs alone can instantly create.
So wrapping up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways here? It seems like, first, just how interconnected and maybe fragile global trade is.
Absolutely. And second, how vulnerable newer industries like crypto mining can be to these sudden policy changes. They don't always have the entrenched alternatives maybe older industries do.
And third, just the real tangible costs, financial and logistical, that this kind of trade uncertainty creates for businesses on the ground.
Yeah, you really see the ripple effects of these high-level decisions. It's not abstract. It means chartered planes, nonstop work, huge expenses.
It does. So maybe the provocative thought to leave folks with is this. Given how global Bitcoin mining is, how reliant it is on these international supply chains, how feasible is that vision of a truly made in the USA crypto industry?
Right. Especially when trade policies can fluctuate so much. What kind of long-term strategies do U.S. mining companies need to even think about to navigate this? Hedging bets, diversifying locations, lobbying for stability.
It's complex. There are no easy answers, I guess.
Not at all. It's definitely something that requires a lot more thought, especially for anyone involved in the industry.